Time being 9 o'clock, time being 9 o'clock, time being 9 o'clock, time being 9 o'clock. Is it coming over? There. Time being 9 o'clock, I'll call the meeting to order. Please all stand and join in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good morning, everybody. Thanks you for attending. Please make sure your phones are on silent. Patty, you want to do a roll call, please?
Brian,
Here.
John,
Here.
Dan,
Here.
Wanda, Don.
Here. Is there any reason at this time that anybody on the commission needs to declare financial conflict of interest
No.
instead of abstain from voting?
No.
Nope.
No. Time for public comment. Do we have anything up there, Gary? No. Okay, public comment period is over then. 9:10.
Agenda, approve agenda.
Yeah, approval of the agenda.
Mr. Chair, the only thing I'd have is I know item 28. Generally, we don't have action items on an agenda like this. And without like the state's attorney's office to kind of guide us on that, maybe that would be better suited for a regular meeting. This is kind of my thought. That's a pretty big decision to make on a not normal meeting.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think
Yeah.
we can have a discussion about it, but we shouldn't make any action at all.
Yeah, I mean, Tuesday's meeting is just a couple days away.
Yeah.
Where we just do
Yep.
it on Tuesday and just
Okay.
don't even touch it. And if we gotta do that,
We'll table item 28 until next Tuesday's meeting.
I've already set the agenda to the paper, so you'll have to add it to the agenda then.
okay.
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 Make a motion to approve the agenda, with the change.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
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 Pose the same. Motion carries. Thank you. Paul. How are you?
Good morning. I was actually going to say my name is Preston. Hereford. He's here, so I'm not gonna.
Good way to get arrested, right?
So, good evening, or afternoon, or morning, whatever it is. It's Friday. I've also brought Erin along, so if you have any questions for her as we go through this process. Our budget didn't really change a whole lot. We added some, 4.4 to our personnel, our wages area, if you will. I gave you a booklet, kind of our 5-year plan, everything that's in there, kind of what our office is doing. We got, the computers, stuff like that. We added some, that's where our budget went up, about $3,200. Across the board, our budget didn't change. It's the exact same as what it was last year.
And Paul, for the newer people, a portion of your guys' salary is reimbursed from the state, correct? So I don't know if you guys realize that by having a full-time emergency manager, a portion of that is
It's called the
reimbursed,
local
yeah.
emergency planning
Yeah.
grant that we got, the LNPG. You might hear us talk about that
Yeah.
in that acronym. But the federal government pays half of each of our salaries back to the county. We
Yep.
pay it first and then
Yep.
they reimburse us.
Yep.
And that goes all the way from the county, pays back
Yeah.
to like insurance,
Yeah,
workman's comp, anything that deals that you
Yeah.
guys put out for us, they pay back
Yeah.
half. And we file that every month, and I think Patty
Yeah.
gets a check they start the second quarter of their fiscal year, of the federal fiscal year, because theirs is different than ours.
Yep.
We deal with 3 fiscal years in our office, so. But our budget hasn't changed. We've gotten a couple computers this year. I did print off, and I know there's questions, but this is our current, what Cass, we call it, our analysis of what we spent this year, to date. This is actually, Patty gave you one in our budget for back in whatever date it was. Hot off the press, last week. So that kind of gives you a better idea of where we're at. We've got a couple negatives, but we're getting that money back. The pod, we did some food clinics in the beginning. And we have a grant with the state to do the clinics. We just have, the bills have been submitted to the state. It's just time for them to get that money back, and then that line item will go back to 0. Or however we do that at the end of the year. Anticipated revenue. But like I said, we've got computers. We do maintain 6 generators across the county, the different community centers. And I mean by that, it could be the fire station, but I have a generator out at the lake station. We have one at our office. We have one in Gayville, Irene, not Irene, but Lake, I said Lake, but there's 5, we have 6 of them total. And every year, it's about $350 to $400 to do the yearly maintenance. And then this year, we're gonna have to do a power load on all of them to make sure that they're capable of doing it, so there'll be an extra. So I didn't drop the budget this year based on some of the higher maintenance that's coming up this year.
What's a power loads that test for the capacity of the generator
Yes, it does,
system?
yeah. Like if we have
It's like a
45
stress test
kV,
based,
yeah, stress
basically,
based, yeah. And so, and then we have one out at the highway shop, but there's one sitting there to the south of the shed. Mike is changing the oil on us and stuff for that. That's 190 kV. We use that for our shelters if we need it. We also have an MOU now wrote with the hospital. So if theirs would fail, we could help them out if we're not using it, kind of thing. So, but anyway, just keeping all of our equipment up to date and going. We felt that we needed just basically to leave it the same, and just a little increases in our supplies because of the computers. And I've been working with Ryan and John about, we're gonna go to those little sticks.
Yep.
For our other ones, it's kind of like a micro computer, a lot cheaper. They're about $700 time to get everything put together. Sorry.
Wanda wasn't here to make sure that was on.
That is Wanda's fault, definitely.
Yeah.
For the
Yeah.
record, yeah.
Okay. So anyway, that's basically what we're doing. Yes.
So Paul, we're always thinking about budgets and monies, and we've talked in the past about possible ways that we could share services with other counties. Would that be a possibility in your area, and if so, would it save possibly money?
It could. I know a few years ago, we looked at, there was another county, their emergency manager quit. And they were looking at possibly filling in, and then they decided they're gonna hire their own. But, I mean, currently, right now, we work with other emergency managers. Granted, there's no fees back and forth at this time. So in a way, that's saving us money, because we're not using them to come over, help us, and then have to pay them back. But I would think if there is a way that working with other counties, I mean, we have, between Aaron and I, we can help other, in other capabilities or vice versa. You just signed about 6 months ago a mutual aid agreement with 11 counties that we have in our region. So if we had a disaster here, they would come here and help us.
Right.
We would put their costs to the federal disaster if it would become that, but otherwise there's no obligation if there isn't. So in a way, that does save us money, but not probably the way we want to see it right now.
Yeah.
But it's a means. But we're more than willing to look at helping out, or if we could find a way to take on responsibility and get paid by another agency to help offset our costs to do some of the jobs for them. Yeah.
Paul, do you guys have like a state emergency management, like association or
Yes.
anything like that? Has there been any talk about that you guys kind of maybe trying to like regionalize your services? I know you guys have regions. They're
Yeah.
kind of not maybe,
Right.
our region kind of goes through the middle of the state and up, but it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Well-
But is there, like, to his point, is there been any more talk about
Not right,
like that?
not right, Tom.
Okay.
when you talk about the board.
Sure.
I'm the treasurer of the South
Oh,
Dakota,
nice.
and Aaron is the secretary of the board. And then Harold.
Yankton represents, right?
Harold Timmerman
Yeah.
is the president from Lincoln
Okay.
County, so we're kinda, I mean, we're East River rules,
Yeah.
hope nobody from West River's watching. But anyway, there hasn't been that, but, and to go back to why our region is the way it is that it all came around Homeland Security money. You know, each region was allocated so much money, well, they based it on population.
Sure,
Well, Sioux Falls is in Lincoln is so big.
Yeah.
They threw fuel, because we used to be a part of that region. When
Yeah.
I first started, we were part of Sioux Falls as Region 1. Well, then they divided it out so that we could get a chunk of the money, because they were, you know, a lot of it went to the bigger towns. So that's how we go up and around through Brookings, and it's kind of weird, but that's how our region
Yeah.
looks weird. But the mutual aid agreements were something that we started a few years ago to try to make sure that we had a means to help everybody out and save costs. You know, if we brought in a state IMAT team, you know, they're free until we get a federal declaration, and then we have to pay. So, but yes, I mean, if there's ways, if you have your county region or your county
Or 8
state
county.
meeting, 8 county meetings, if there's a way that we can help out, you know, I don't see a problem with us moving in and doing some duties.
That's a discussion we had, John and I, at our last 8 county meeting with Clay County and Hutchinson and Bon Home is what kind of services we can combine and to save dollars. And, you know, that's just something I think counties are gonna be forced to face in the future with the budget that we have.
Well, and one thing we're seeing too is, you know, and not, you know, like Clay County, it's got a, he's not, he's full-time, but he's not really,
Yeah.
he's like half-time.
What, is he
No,
VSO?
no, not over there, but
Okay.
you go to
Yeah.
Bonham County,
Yeah.
Eric, he
Yeah.
does 3 jobs.
yeah.
You know, so, and the state is making our job, there's more requirements.
Sure.
That now we have to do a task book to
Yeah.
make sure we're NIMS, each individual is NIMS compliant,
Yeah.
or we know our ICS correctly. And it's like, really? But anyway, it's a requirement of our monies that we get back from the state and the feds.
Yeah.
So is that gonna put a burden on them? Maybe.
Well, I think it does when you have these small counties and, you know, not to pick on our neighbor, but when you have 3 jobs and they're all highly complex jobs, are
Yes.
you doing service to each one? And I'll use Veteran Service Office job as an example. As complex as that job is getting and as technical as it's getting and all the school you have to go to it, are you doing that veteran the service
doing
by
the
not,
service in that
by
category?
not knowing, you know, especially with all the new rules that came down this year, and that's where
Yep.
consolidation could help.
Yeah, but like I said, yes, we are more than willing to take a look, and, you know, if we can, we can help, we have no problem, you know, if there's a way of working that into there, yeah.
Good.
So, but other than that, and any other questions with our budget, like I said, I know we always like to see it go down, but, I mean, with the technologies and some things, and we're not getting, our softwares and our programs that we operate, you know, are still there, and nobody's going down in software prices, and, you know, our programs that we have to have are a cost, so we just left it the way it was. We do have a 5-year plan put together. I don't know if any of you looked through it. You know, we are looking for we talked about this, Don, and I talked to John about a new facility. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not here asking for a $2 million building, but we're looking at a way to do mitigation where we can use federal dollars to some part here in town. Our Aaron's vision, if you will, is to put a storm shelter in Yankton, and then on top of it would be our new training center and office, so that we would have a means and be federally funded, and we'd only have a 15% or 5%, depending on the mitigation program. But to be able to do something like that and make it dual purpose, you know, rather than just a building that you might use once a month.
Yeah.
Sure.
So, and it'll be our emergency operations center, all that stuff, because with the railroad tracks being where we're at, you know, we get dinged every year, because if we have a disaster, if a train derailment, you know, you're first on scene. So, you know, they kinda like to see that change, but anyway, if there's any other questions,
Are you
I'll shut up.
planning on doing any more, or maybe you still do some of the ICS classes that
Yep.
we have? I mean, I know those are really important for the entry-level leadership on incident.
we're looking at doing a
response,
402, which is another, for government elected officials. We'll make sure we send out the link for the ICS 100, 200 that's online, that you can take at any time at your leisure. The 300, 400, they're looking at maybe doing something in this fall, but again, it's getting it booked, and the state's gotten to the point where they gotta have at least 15 people. You
Yeah.
know, and it's tough to get that many people to commit to a two-day,
Yeah.
3-day class. So.
Yep.
But anyway, yes, we're doing a full-scale exercise in September, which is gonna be a decon working with the hospital. And when we get done here, we're on our way out to HSC to work on their command team. So if they have a disaster, how can the county assist them and anything like that, even though they are a state agency, we're their neighbors, and so that we're headed there next. So,
Any other questions?
Thank you.
I have none. Thanks, Paul.
you bet, thank you.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Paul.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Aaron.
You too. Sheriff. Good morning.
Bring my coffee because I don't know how long I'll be here. So,
luck.
thank you again for allowing me to come up here and present this to you guys. You guys got the packet I presented. Obviously,
Which one's yours? Is it?
I think you should have had the packet I provided.
It's in
in
with
the
his,
book.
It's in the book.
So obviously, as your guys' new sheriff, just been kind of evaluating the agency as a whole. Just things, what we can improve on, what we need, what we don't need, but, future planning, that kind of stuff. So on page 2, just list the 5 budgets that I'm currently responsible for. And then on page 3, I just kind of wrote up the things that we are looking at adding. So the first part, an additional full-time deputy sheriff position. I listed from currently this year, from 2017, the calls for service and the case reports that the deputy sheriffs do. You will notice that the CFS, which is the call for service, so that's like if somebody called, dispatch, that call goes through dispatch and then a deputy gets dispatched to the area. The case reports, which is the number right next to the CFS, that is the actual case that was open and a report was done by a deputy. That number is higher than the CFS's because they used to not let calls go through dispatch, and now we're changing that culture where everything has to go through dispatch, so it's better documented. And then if a deputy is assigned a call, then we know that somebody's responsible for that call for service. So if somebody calls back 2 months later, they don't say, well, I already reported it. Well, we don't have any record of it. So now it's forced to go through dispatch. So otherwise the officers were just creating their own case reports when somebody would call into the sheriff's office. So I'm just looking at adding one additional full-time staff member, one for the sheriff's side, one for corrections, based off the 2023 fiscal year. I've already talked to Patty in the auditor's office about adding an additional expenditure overtime budget line to help with the overtime and comp time. So I don't anticipate everybody to take overtime. Some people like to have that comp time there, but just in case, that's why I would add an overtime budget line. It helps us track who's taking overtime, who's taking, and then the comp time obviously would just work out of their wages, but part-time transporters, I'm looking at upping that 10,000 for salary, just because I think currently we're paying transporters about $15 an hour, and they get called out at 2 o'clock in the morning. Not a lot of people want to wake up for $15 an hour to go do a transport to Sioux Falls at Avera Sacred Heart Avera Behavioral Health.
You said $15 an hour
Yeah.
we're paying those guys?
Yep.
And they carry a firearm
Yeah.
and all that, and they're a law enforcement? Yeah, that's
And there's
a lot of responsibility for somebody who makes less than a stalker at Walmart.
And then if they're sitting at the hospital, I think there's a different pay scale, so I'm looking at changing that, but with the approval of upping at 10,000, I can adjust their wage and just make it consistent. I think it's 13 something to sit at the hospital. So it's really hard to find people, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I've actually done it myself already this year to get up and do my part. And I did a transport, you know, almost at midnight just to cover a shift.
Transport to Sioux Falls?
Yeah, Sioux
mostly?
Falls, yeah. Or, you know, in the jail, we house a lot of inmates, almost 100 at a time. And if somebody has to go to Vera Sacred Heart, we have to man them.
Yep,
So
yep,
it's hard to pay somebody $13 an hour to man them up at
Yeah.
the hospital. Even though it's just down the street, but we have to have somebody there that's
yeah.
armed.
And Sheriff, you transport all of the juveniles to Sioux Falls too, back
Yeah.
and forth, correct?
Yeah, and I'll and I'll talk about that when I get to the juvenile budget. There was a or I think out of salary last year, officers were getting I think $50 stipends for their cell phone usage. Under my reign, we're not going to use personal cell phones for work related stuff, so I've already worked with FirstNet about, so now we have, excuse me, so now we have work phones versus using people's personal cell phones. We were looking at upgrading cameras in the cars, but if you go to a car accident, now they can use the phones, take pictures of the scene. It just streamlines it a lot easier, and we're not spending, the pictures on cell phones anymore take better pictures than a lot of the camera phone, or the actual cameras anymore. Also, if you can see, transport vehicles right now, the big van that we have is a 2017 Chevy. It's got 171,000 miles on it, so that will need to be replaced. So you'll see that in the sheriff's budget line. We also have another minivan that's got 122,000 miles on it, and then we have an old patrol vehicle that's got 115,000 miles on it that will, so there's just a lot of miles on these vehicles, because we do a lot of transport, so. So page 4, you can see the requested budget of what I asked for. If you guys got any questions on the sheriff's side of it, I've already included the salary, the 4.4 CPI increase, or the anticipated expense. I know on the workman's compensation, we were in the negative this year, but we had an individual had a major surgery that was from being on duty, so I just left that one remaining the same. Just like Paul indicated when he was up here, the cost of stuff is just going up. And the sheriff's office does a lot of things for the county, and in order to maintain that, obviously you got to increase some stuff. Some things are manageable, so I was able to leave those itemized lines the same, but otherwise.
Do you have a special project in mind on maintenance contracts?
Correct, yeah, and actually on page 3, I talked about equipment needs and grants. I'm working on a grant for WFCOM body cameras, because we did test some body cameras. And I'm working on a grant for that, but if not, that's why I put in a proposed budget of, it's almost $10,000 a year for everybody to have their own body camera. And it's for a 5-year deal. So Axon, I think, was astronomically like $22,000 more. But these cameras are sufficient. We tested them out and we liked the product. So I'm just budgeting if I can't get the grant for that.
And that provides protection to the enforcement officer.
Yeah, correct. And, you know, working for the city, we already had body cameras, and I was kind of skeptical because it's like, well, the public doesn't trust us, you know, why do we have to wear these? But I will tell you firsthand, it's done more good than bad. It's good protection for the county, because somebody comes in and files a complaint against a deputy. We got videotape of it, and then they drop whatever the complaint was. Or we look at false reporting, because what they reported was false, and so then they get charged.
Well, and you see so much now of everybody's got a cell phone and they record, but it only starts recording when they do it, and the body camera does the whole incident. You don't see what led up to that, and a lot of times that's an important part too, so.
Yeah, and
that's something I think is important to.
Yeah, and that's the reason why the maintenance and contracts went up, and then the cell phone allowance comes out of the maintenance and contracts now too. That's why I took it out of the salary budget line. We did get some grants. It is on page 3. Sorry to have you flip back and forth, but I did underline and bold the ones that I got grant money for. So that's, when I say free money, it's money that somebody else didn't get. Okay. Because I was at a Utica council meeting and they were like, well, it's not free. Well, it's money that we applied for and got, not somebody else. So we're going to get some new in-car laptops, which is a pretty drastic amount. And I worked with the emergency management office on securing the just under $25,000 and getting 9 laptops for our officers to be out on patrol more and not at the office. Like I said, the Wolfcom in-car video cameras. So there's a DUI grant that's going to pay for those. We'll pay it first and then they'll reimburse us. And then there's also some overtime DUI hours that I applied for, about 100 hours worth of DUI enforcement. So obviously we got people from different states that come here and they want to relax, which we want people to enjoy their vacation time here. But there's still some rules and we don't want, there's still a public need, a safety to be out there and enforcing DUIs out by the lake, or even if there's a special event in Gayville or Lesterville or whatever, we can put an extra deputy out on the road and it's paid overtime for it. So
I know nobody likes increases, but with the census that came out, the lake area has grown by 20%, over 5,000 people. I mean, that's bigger than the majority of municipalities in the state of South Dakota. Our responsibility, and we don't get any sales tax to pay for it. It has to come out of property tax.
Yep.
It's one of the main things that I guess I hear from people, and maybe Ryan hears it from the lake area, is
Yeah.
they want more of a police presence out there.
Well, and then I see like there's some really good efficiencies. I think we're gonna have, the laptops in the cars, going away from personal cell phone use is a very good thing, because cell phones are very insecure by themselves.
Yeah.
You're dealing with a lot of sensitive things all the time. So I think that's a really good thing to start using is a dedicated phone for the officers.
yes,
So I think there's some really good improvements here.
yeah, and this is my first 6 months into office, and so I'm just diving into a lot of stuff. We're working on evidence management for outdoor storage, and John was part of that conversation yesterday. So we're working with, the Yankton Police Department and the city to save money on how we can better do things. And obviously I want to do a canine program. That's not in this budget because I'm looking at donations, and I've been working with Patty on how to collect the donations and have that go to our specific program. I've got donors that want to donate to it, so we're just trying to figure out how we can be within the law and collect those funds. And then tasers, there's not a need for right now, but Axon is discontinuing some products, and we currently carry it for all the officers. And those will be probably next year project. But I just wanted to let you guys know that that's probably coming down the pipe.
Well, looking at the total budget requested versus the 222 budget, it looks like we've increased expenses about 25%. But of that, over half of that is in maintenance contracts. So I think it kind of fits with today's environment, considering these are maintenance projects that you have to do.
And a lot of the stuff comes out of the sheriff's budget anyways, like
Yeah.
the transport vehicle, that comes out of the sheriff's budget, and it's separate from the jail, so. And then if you move to, so I've already listed all the current employees, what their salary increases would be for 2024.
Is that 3 open positions you got right now? or-
Yeah, currently we have 3, and I would like to add a 4th. Hopefully we'll We do get some applications in, but, you know, we look at the quality of the person, and we wanna make sure that we have the right fit for our agency, so I'm just not gonna hire anybody, you know, so.
It's important that we have to stay competitive too. I was talking to some of the local police officers and trying to get them to come to the sheriff, and
Dan,
if
you're
we're
not
not,
supposed to do that.
if we're not competitive, we're not gonna get qualified applicants. And I believe the highway patrol is, from what I was told, pays around $30 an hour for somebody out of the academy.
They just passed it because they're struggling to get people.
Yeah.
And now the starting wage is $30.08 for a
Yeah.
trooper.
Yep. And I was listening to the state county funding study, and there are counties up in the north that cannot get deputies, because why would you work for the county sheriff when you can go work for the highway patrol and make $10 more an hour? I mean, it's a reality.
And there are some counties up north that are paying more per hour than what we are. And they're a smaller agency because they're just struggling that
Yeah.
bad to get people, so. But then, like I said, I would like to add an added overtime budget line on top of it, so that way we can track the overtime hours, and that allows the employee to either take the overtime or do the comp.
I think that'll help also in justifying and seeing if we need more people or not, you know?
Yeah, especially if we're low staff, the overtime has to be given because
Sure. So what's your plan with this overtime? Do you want a certain amount in there, and we hope we don't use it, but if you get close to using that amount, you're gonna come back to us and say, you know, we're gonna need more overtime in this, or what's, I guess, your plan for that?
Yeah, so I kind of visited with the Yankton Police
Sure,
Department. We got
sure.
about half staff on the sheriff's side
Okay.
than what they have for officers.
Okay.
And their overtime budget line was 80-some thousand. So that's why I shot for the 40,000 for
Okay.
our side. And it's kind of a guesstimate. I don't know.
Okay.
We may not even touch that
Yeah.
because some people still would like comp time
Sure.
instead of being, you know, forced to come in and work the overtime.
Yeah.
But we're
as long as
tracking
it's-
we're tracking the comp time too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, because then, yeah, so you can look at this and like, oh, if you have too much of that going on, then it's maybe time to hire, add a position.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. Yeah.
And that's why I'm just including the extra deputy position now, so that way, if I got four good apps right away at the first of the year, I can hire and get them trained up. And
And
when
not
you,
pay overtime.
yeah,
Yep.
and when you get a certified, officer, which we hired somebody that was certified already, you don't send somebody for 13 weeks to peer, and you're paying them to just train. But, you know, sometimes you might have to hire somebody brand new, and then you have to train them. So our FTO program, which is our Field Training Officer program, is 13 weeks. And then you gotta send them to peer for another 13 weeks. So it takes a while to get somebody certified, you know, cause you get them, they're wearing
Yeah.
a gun, a badge, and they have arrest powers, and
Yeah.
you wanna make sure that they don't cause lawsuits for the county. And
Has there been any thought about maybe trying to get some, you know, part-time help? I mean, I know there's probably some certified people who are maybe retired or something, and they maybe don't wanna work part-time, but would work, you know, 20 hours a week, and they're already, I mean, has that been a thought, or is that something you wanna
Yep.
stay away from, or?
well, no, I've already
You know, okay.
so I already addressed that with
Okay.
so John Slama.
Okay.
You know, he was a longtime jail sergeant.
Mhm.
He led a certification lapse in January. I
Okay.
said, let's go back to the board, get you reinstated.
Okay.
So I pay him a deputy sheriff's starting wage.
Okay.
But, you know, he's in the courtroom.
Okay.
Doing courtroom security, cause I need
Nice.
somebody up there to do
Sure,
arrest
okay.
powers.
Great.
So I don't have a full-timer. Now I can put them on the streets to take calls. So I have already looked at
Awesome.
doing
Yeah.
that, yeah,
That's
so
a
that's a good thing to bring
Great
up.
way to do that, yeah.
Yep.
Dan, I think according to what one of our previous county commissioners said, he served
Yeah. Send him an email, right?
in this position
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't know if I believe that though. No, but, there are some of those guys who, when they retire from, law enforcement or military or whatever, they don't wanna work full-time again, but they would be willing to work
Sure.
20, and if we could, get a couple of those guys, it might save us, and it sounds like he's already looking into
Yep.
that, so that's great.
Yeah, it takes one of my full-time guys out of the courtroom. and-
Yeah, exactly.
And we're not paying benefits, he's just getting a straight wage,
Yep,
and
yep.
he's got arrest powers again, so.
Preston, did you put that 40,000 in a line item?
I included it in the salary, just for now, until an added,
Okay.
because I know we talked about adding an added line for overtime, so I included the 40,000 in the salary budget line.
Okay.
So that's already included in there.
Good question.
Page 6, GL budget proposal, just kind of same thing on the sheriff's side, adding an extra full-time position, doing the same thing with the overtime budget line. Again, just to avoid the comp time, overtime issue. There's just some small increases on kind of like the, let's see here, maintenance and contracts. Obviously, they had phone service came out of the salary line. Everybody's getting issued, or not everybody, but the jail administrator and 2 jail sergeants have phones, so that way when they're on call or whatever, they can take call, and it's referencing their job, not their personal lives. So. I will tell you, for inmate medical insurance, stuff like that, we are looking, for an increase on that, just because, cost of medical is going up. I am renegotiating with the Marshall contract, and I kind of told some of you guys already that we're looking to up it. October, I'm gonna go back to the negotiation table again with the Marshalls, and I think that we'll come to an overall good solution to get that raised. So that's,
With inmate medical, I've heard, I guess, conflicting information, and maybe Gene, with the Medicare expansion, does that have any effect on inmate? Be nice if it did. But, all right. So if they're eligible for.
After they get out.
Wow. Yeah. So if they're eligible for it on the outside and then they go inside, that's still our responsibility.
food services, when I took office right away, we were over $23,000-ish from last year's budget because of food services. And then when I got in the office, they said they were gonna increase it another 8% on top of what we were already budgeted, and we were already 20,000 last year. So I had to make a decision. I cut morning hot breakfasts, the colds. So that drove my price down to 18%. So now we're, I think if I looked at the current budget for jail, just by making that drastic change, and when I say drastic, you're not getting a hot pancake anymore. Food services, we're right at 53%, so I'm still a little over budget, but I had to make a decision on what we were gonna do for, because if I didn't do it, we'd be really over the budget already.
What is your cost to feed an inmate per day?
Depends on your amount of inmates.
Mhm.
So if you're right around 100,
Mhm.
it could, be like 2 something a
Okay.
meal. And if you dip below 100,
Yeah.
it could be 3 something,
So
I'd
about-
have to look at the sheet.
About $6 to $9.
It was to the point
a
where I
day?
was negotiating hard-boiled eggs for morning
Yeah.
breakfasts to
Yeah.
kind of drive
Yeah.
the price back down.
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, we were able to squeeze in 2 hard-boiled eggs. But once we get over a threshold, it made it a little bit more efficient for us to do that. So,
Sure. No.
so yeah, it just comes down to hard-boiled eggs anymore.
Yeah.
So that was
That's
the,
surprising with bird flu going around and the
Yeah.
price of eggs.
yeah, I know. That's yeah. So, and then moving on, I obviously for the jail staff, I included on page 7 all the current employees. I will tell you that we've kept up. We did some social media advertising for positions, and we're getting apps for that. More so than the deputy side. I don't know why that would be, but, because there's a lot more responsibility, when you work as a
Yeah.
deputy sheriff, but part-time employees, trying to alleviate some people in the control room. If you ever guys get a chance to come to the jail, sit in the control room, and if you already have, you will see how busy it is, especially with court going on. And you got to keep the judges happy and sending people up and having the manpower to move people around. It can be pretty hectic, and and then obviously that added overtime budget line, just like I did on the sheriff's side. But otherwise, jail staff has been pretty well maintained. Juvenile Detention Center on page 8. So this is where I know Don was on that strategic plan with having Wanda look at the juvenile stuff. I haven't gotten anything on what we're gonna do, so I'm just planning for if something doesn't get done. So I think last year there was $175,000 that was budgeted out of rentals for the juvenile detention center. If I have, with the cost up to, I think it's what, $450, $58 a night now. If I have 2 juveniles up in JDC next year for the whole year, I mean, that's almost gonna eat this $365,000 budget or itemized line. So I'm just preparing for if we don't have a solution for that added expense. I know that I've met with Dan and Wanda, because we have a joint thing with the city, and we were just kind of exploring the JDC thing. I'm talking to the current sheriffs around the surrounding counties on if that was something that we were going to take on, and then how if they would be willing to pay. And I think I've got a lot of support from the sheriffs to do that. So I know that Clay County was looking at trying to squeeze one in there on their new jail facility, but it's not ultimately going to be feasible for them, because Sheriff Howe over there, he also too is squeezing hard-boiled eggs in his and his
Well,
budget.
I'm sure they all are, but are there ways that we can collaborate together and lower expenses for everyone, I guess?
Yeah, and since this had to be due by the certain date, I just wanted to, just in case if something didn't get done. And Dan, like I said, he was on part of a conversation of how we could maybe look at a JDC, and I know Wanda's been working on some stuff, but I'm just anticipating if nothing gets done, then we'll have enough money in there to cover the costs. But I'm very optimistic that we'll get something figured out, but I just have to at least have something presented to.
I pulled up the numbers from the county task force for Yankton County from 2009 to 2019. We spent, Yankton County, almost $800,000 on juvenile detention alone. So just, let that sink in on.
And I expect that's going up.
And that's to 2019. That doesn't cover 2020, 2021, 2022, which were some of our biggest years. So we're probably over $1 million. And now costs have doubled. And
Well, I
where
think
they're
that
gonna
one
go.
shooting case would have taken it.
Yeah.
Got his arm shot off with it.
Yep.
That
Yep.
kid would have
Yep.
taken it over $1 million, just him.
Yep. Yep.
Preston, will that, since Clay County is building the new building, do you think that'll affect the housing that we do for the federal? And
Oh,
can Clay County do that then? Will that take away from?
I met with their chief for the marshals, and we've got a good working relationship. Yankton County's always been kind of one of their favorites, just because we do all the transports for them. And Minnehaha County, they also contract with the marshals, but they can't even, currently right now, I mean, they don't take on extra people when they can't have enough employees to take care of their current local arrestees. So I think we have a lot of things going for us still. They said there's always going to be a need because they're shifting people around all the time, people that come here. for the marshal holds, they'll go to Minnesota somewhere. And I'm sure that Clay County will try to jump on to get some marshal stuff, because I know Brookings County just signed up. But they're doing a contract, I think, where they can only house up to like 10 marshals, and we do 40.
Yeah, I believe Clay County, when I talked to Sheriff Howe, it's 44 bed,
Yeah.
which is almost their capacity now. They have built it in a way that their plan is to add on eventually, and it failed at least 2 or 3 times, so it's small because that's what they could get. And I believe that if it gets built at 44, they're still gonna be shipping people out, because that's less than their current capacity now.
Yeah.
So I mean, they have more than 44 inmates for Clay County right now, so
And that's why I was gonna,
they won't be able to house other people, so.
and I'm trying to maximize what we can
Yeah.
get from the marshals on.
And, you know, that's something that people fail to realize about Yankton County. I'm just
No,
gonna
that's fine.
take a second, is, our jail will be, 2025, Patty, it'll be paid for. I mean, I know we complain about our roads and our bridges and stuff like that, but we're gonna have our own jail paid for in a couple years. There are very, very, very few counties that can say that we did that by ourselves. I mean, Clay County at 44 bed jail, $44 million. They're gonna be paying for that for a long time, so.
And that's where I'll give the commissioners and, you know, Sheriff Hunoff, when he was here, when they made that decision, I mean, they strategically planned for the future, and, yeah, I wish there was maybe more Cat 5 wire that was to the building and stuff, but,
Yeah.
you know, at the time, they planned ahead, and, I mean, they set the county up for some success,
Exactly, yeah.
so it was.
Preston, maybe this question is for you or Patty, or maybe it's for the lawyers, but under juvenile detention, should our grant not be extended? There's a half a year, there's only a half a year left out of the fiscal budget. Are we, is that in here? Do you have those expenses in here?
Are you talking about like JD's or JDAI or?
Yeah,
No, and I know I've been on some of the meetings, because I think July of 2024, that grant will end. So I think the Boys and Girls Club and the State's Attorney's Office, and they're gonna have to figure out what, and that's why I brought it up early, because I said, you know, right now they got one coordinator doing that job, and if he was offered a different position somewhere, we're gonna be kind of up a creek, because, you know, Deb Lilly, she does a lot too, and that'd be a lot to put on her to do that program, which I think the diversion is, it's obviously, you've seen some savings here by not sending a juvenile up to Sioux Falls, but that's why we gotta kind of start getting something going, and prepare for, by next July, get something squared away.
well, yeah, the second half of the budget that we're looking at could be non-funded.
Yeah, and that's why I'm just including the $365,000 for the rentals for JDC, just in case something's not put in place, but, obviously this could always change. I just wanted to prepare that we have something in place versus not. And there's a lot of times where we'll have, like the other day, we had a juvenile that was a runaway from Sioux Falls. We housed him right in the sheriff's office and had to have somebody sit on him, because we didn't want to take him all the way to Sioux Falls, because we had to release to a parent. So we made the parent come down. It's not our responsibility to drop your kid off at your front door. So you come get your kid, and that's what they did. But we had to watch them at our station, just in the sheriff's office, not the jail, you know, but.
Question on juveniles, are the juvenile arrests, are those, what % of those are for municipal, like curfew violations or municipal violations? Do you know? Is that
I think that, when I was working for the police department, you know, and Chief Harris was around, he had 0 tolerance, and Chief Foot's the
Yeah.
same way. And I think when kids know that there's curfew being enforced, you don't see them out as much. I mean, yeah, you got a
Okay.
couple that trickle in, but there was a 0 tolerance, like you see somebody out the ordinance
Okay.
was enforced. And that's a
Sure.
city ordinance
Yeah.
versus the state.
Well, here's what, when John and I were at the 8-county meeting, Pennington County charges the city of Rapid City for municipal arrests for juveniles. And the reason I say that is this is, when a juvenile gets arrested in the city on a municipal crime, the cost is all on the county. And is that necessarily fair? I was surprised that the city of Rapid City and Pennington County have the agreement where on a municipal crime, the city of Pennington reimburses the county. And if that relationship works there, maybe that's something that we can discuss. I mean, because like I said, in the last decade, we're approaching $1 million cost to us for just juveniles. Maybe that's a conversation we could have. I don't disagree that juveniles need to be arrested for curfew, but that's not a state crime, that's not a county crime, that's a municipal crime. And if it's just maybe a conversation we could have.
Yeah,
I guess, I don't know.
yeah. So that was the juvenile detention one. So that's why there was an increase so much on that one, just because of the anticipation if we had to send somebody to JDC in Sioux Falls. That's why that one's an increase from, I think last year was 180,000 to 369, just because they're pretty much doubling the rent, on us. Next over, you got the 24/7 budget on page 9. It seems like the judicial system's like putting a lot more people out on 24/7. And so, they have a full-time coordinator in a lot of different counties. I'm still preparing to keep it as a part-time position. So that way we're not, I don't think we're to the point where we need a full-timer yet, but
How is that machine worked out?
a kiosk machine.
Yeah, maybe explain to the public, because I think, I know we did that during COVID, but that was and you weren't here, but that was a huge cost savings, is we used to have all the people on 24/7 lineup, and we had people come up and they'd blow in a straw, and we had, to pay all the employees, and we basically went to a kiosk machine and eliminated, the need. It's real efficient.
It is, yeah, and when
Yeah.
Sheriff Lahakis brought that in,
Yeah.
it was, they come in, they got designated times now, so there's
Yep.
not that,
Yep.
it's like when you go to the grocery store and you gotta wait, to get checked out or whatever, but it's initiated, so people come in, they put the straw in, they blow, and it's for the cost effectiveness, we pay the kiosk, for the services, but then also,
Yeah.
we're making the person pay for it.
Yeah.
So that's how it's paying for itself.
Yeah, it's just another way utilizing technology to make the county run more efficient.
More efficient,
So,
yeah.
And we don't do a good enough job sometimes of telling the public about that, I guess, unless they have to go and blow in
And
it,
it's still
which
it's-
hopefully they don't, but,
Still catches the people that try to use mouthwash in the morning.
oh, it's that?
Well, when it gives them a positive reading. But there's a lot of, the drug patches and stuff. I mean, that's where Cheryl Stoliker does a good job. I mean, she's been doing this for a while and putting the drug patch on and people trying to manipulate it. So that's kind of if there's a kiosk machine that would just slap it on people, that'd be great. But we still need Cheryl for those reasons, so.
Do we have any more questions? I'd like to compliment you on your first budget to us. It was done exceptionally well and provided most of our answers.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I try, it's my first time go around. I want to make sure that, you guys got all the information up front and pretty transparent on how, if you guys got questions, you can call me anytime. I want to help out where I can. The juvenile detention stuff, I think that's still just we'll get something figured out. I just want to make sure that we get something put in place. And if Wanda was here, I'll talk to her more about it too,
Yeah.
but.
I think she's got a good plan.
And I'm sorry, I just took way over 10 minutes for everybody else. So, But it's a large amount of money for the,
It's one of the biggest employee areas of the county, so
yeah,
you should take a little more time.
yeah. So, and Paul, he weaseled his way out of here,
Yeah,
so.
yeah.
I'll get it back though, so. All right. Any other questions for me at all?
I think we're good, and just like Don said, thanks for preparing us the way you did, and that's wonderful.
Yeah, I actually have one little question. It's like, I was just going through all the lines here and I'm like, I saw vaccinations and on the jail budget was 2,500. And the previous years we didn't have, it looks like it was never spent. That's vaccinations for the employees, I'm assuming.
Yeah, and I think Sheriff
Like
LaHawk
flu
has
and
had that in
everything.
place if, hepatitis B shot
Yeah.
or whatever. I think it was just always offered. So that's why I didn't increase it. Nobody ever used it. I didn't.
Okay.
So that's, I
Alright,
thought
I was just-
last year was like more for a COVID or something, but
Yeah, I was just noting it really doesn't look like it's ever being used, but
no.
yeah, okay.
So, but yeah, if there's any other questions, I mean, feel free to reach out to me anytime, so.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
All right.
The one that's gonna make all the expenses okay is up next.
Next victim.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
I'm
Hi,
not
Patty.
taking nearly as much time as Preston did, because I got nothing. I did salary increases, the 4.4.
Patty, put your mic on.
Yeah.
Wanda'd be very disappointed if she was here.
Yes, she would, wouldn't she? Good thing she's not here staring
Yeah.
daggers at me. I just did the salary increase is all I did, of 4.4. Everything else I kept the same. Except that I did add $5,000 for our computer refresh next year. We normally go every 3 years. This will be our 5th year.
Looks
And then
good to me.
Yeah, I did allow for possible steps, and I have 4 longevity, but the longevity doesn't add up to too much.
So is there any way, I'm just asking this, in your thoughts that you could reduce expenses in the area of employees?
In employees,
Yeah, numbers.
no.
Okay.
We could increase. We could have a full-time person just to answer the phones and deal with out-of-staters easily.
Yeah.
And again, could there be some shared with another county? If it were computerized and we used technology to a higher level?
Not that I can think of. A lot of our stuff is state stuff, so we can't do anything with that program or anything like that.
Well, a lot of your duties are statutorily required by the state. I mean, in motor vehicle and licensing. I mean, when they come in, a lot of the fees you collect don't even go to the county.
No.
They go to the state. We have all the work, all the requirements,
Right.
and a big portion of that money goes to the state, and they don't have any of the personnel costs. They don't have any of the overhead. But the
Or
state
the
gets a
grief.
big chunk of it, so.
Yeah, I'm just wondering if technology can
Yeah.
resolve some of that.
Yeah.
Well,
What do we
again,
do
with the
for
state
two
stuff,
counties?
we're
We-
limited
We've got a
on.
23,000 populated county, and there are other counties that are, what's Minnehaha, 200,000 now?
Probably,
Yeah, they have a whole different setup than we do.
Yeah.
I mean, they have their own IT department and everything,
yeah.
which we don't have.
No, I guess my question is there a way we should have it?
Is that you?
On time, on-site, full-time, I don't see the necessity. Because, like I said, a lot of our stuff is state. So if something happens to the state program, our hands are tied. We're at their mercy. The server isn't even here. It's 4 hours away.
Patty, is it your call or is it a state call I know they used to have those license plate kiosks at Hy-Vee and stuff. Is that your decision or is that a state decision for that? Or
Actually,
who's-
in this case,
Yeah.
in ours, it
Yeah.
was Hy-Vee's decision.
Okay, so I mean, that would be, I guess, something if you know, the state or somebody wanted to put, you know, like more of those automated kiosks around, then people would not come to her office. I mean, that would reduce it, but I believe, don't we have, Ryan, you'd probably know, don't we, you can pay property taxes online on our
Yes.
website now, which would reduce that, and
We get a ton that's
and,
paid
and,
on.
and so
online.
that's one of the reductions, and I believe, you can do mail-in with motor vehicle and all
Well,
of
you can
that stuff.
you can do motor V online too, but you
Yeah.
can't do transfers and stuff
Yeah,
like that
yeah,
online, but
so-
you can do renewals.
Okay,
And we get a lot of that as well, the online and the kiosk, even though when they
Sure.
changed the kiosks, Hy-Vee didn't want to accommodate the larger kiosk.
so,
Any other questions?
no,
No,
I have
I don't
this
think so.
for you, if you wanna look this over for me and then get back to me.
Okay.
I did, talk to some of the commissioners, and if you wanna maybe bring it up, is the, huge increase that you've got of, you know, out-of-staters calling and taking up significant amounts of your
Absolutely.
staff's time on, mail-ins. And that law recently got changed July 1st, but up until then, the county was actually losing some money mailing out license plates. That law has changed July 1st.
Actually, and
but-
that had an emergency clause, so I think that
Yeah.
took place in like
Okay,
April.
but yeah, there was a time
Yeah.
that we were spending all of this time and actually losing money
Hmm.
on this. And so, I'm gonna work with Patty on a resolution, to try to help that out, so. But that's, if you wanna talk any more about that, that's getting to be a problem, isn't it? for
Yes,
your
it is.
staff?
It's, well, and I think problem maybe isn't quite the right word, but it's an issue for sure, because it is taking up a lot of our time. I mean, we're on phone with out-of-staters, I mean, hours a day.
And would this be something that they could do online or something like that, where they could just get all the things?
No, because you have to have a South Dakota driver's license to do anything online. And
Okay.
they're out-of-state residents. They have, a lot of them have absolutely no ties to South Dakota whatsoever.
Yeah.
They
Yeah,
just
or
find us on the
Is there
map.
any way
and-
of like, we can expedite the time on the phone or something like that? You know, like if they have a lot of the stuff, information are ready to go, like, or they know exactly, you know,
Well, we try.
yeah.
Yeah, and then a lot of them do come to our counter too.
Yeah.
You know, but it's still, they're still not South Dakota residents.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we can't turn them away because there's nothing that allows us
Mm-hmm.
to, even though some counties do. We do not.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank
Everybody
your
have a good day.
Thank your team for doing a great job, too.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
Next item on the agenda is the budget, Veterans Service Office. Rob couldn't be here, but his budget's there. Are there any questions on that?
Is that the one that got handed out? Which one is that?
No,
It's in the book.
In the book?
The red tab.
What did it look like, Gary? I've got too many papers.
No, it's in there. It's in your book.
It's the red tab.
It's about the middle.
Go up, go up, go up.
It's pretty standard. There isn't much involved there.
Mine's a different color. I guess,
Sorry, I didn't color
I
coordinate.
guess I did speak with Rob, a little bit about it. He couldn't, be here today. The PACT Act that we've, spoken about several times, many veterans who'd previously not been able to receive, services are now eligible. Many of them are elderly, Vietnam era. I'll give an example of a guy I know personally who, stationed in Thailand, loading the Agent Orange on the aircraft, wasn't eligible for any veteran services, but, you know, now he is. So Rob has gotten a lot more initial claims. He's having to travel to, again, elderly veterans, sometimes to their bedside because they're hospitalized. And so he did ask for some additional electronics and technology because all these claims are digital, and he has to have the veteran or the family member sign electronic copies. And so he needs I think, a little bit better computer to accomplish that. So I think that was the reason for the increase in the, what was it, the computer?
Okay, thanks, Dan.
Yep.
Any other questions or comments on the Veteran Service Officer? If not, I'd entertain a motion to take a 5-minute break.
Yeah. Patty, one question on that. What is the state's portion that it pays on this? Because they'll pay 20% of so they'll pay out of this 62,000, they pay for like, or is it like 4,000?
veterans, you
Yeah, they'll pay $4,000
Their
out of.
salary.
Well, they'll pay 25% of a certain. Here, I'll pull it up. I think I got it right here. They pay a portion of it, but it's only like a few $1,000s, is it
Yeah,
not?
it isn't
Okay.
a lot.
I think I might have that information here. I'd make that motion for the 5-minute breakdown, sorry.
Have a motion for a 5-minute break.
I'll second.
Second? Thank
Second.
you. Motion and a second, discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Yeah, I know it's not very much, Dan.
Yeah, I'm gonna, I'll look that up and I'll bring it.
Yeah, it's up there. Thank you, sir.
You betcha. Mike, how you doing?
So you've had them long enough to absorb the and the skin.
Yeah, I mean, it's, right now, it's just, this is what we want.
set that's still.
I like it, I think you lucked out, just on, you know, bought it, I think in 2014, just right down to the farm. Guy hammered it, was interesting.
I tried to get
Glad I
it
did, it's just,
and I told him I'm willing to drive up there.
DUI water, had a trailer house, and had a 40 by 60 shop. Most of those places out there don't have DUI water. Why am I gonna spend $1,000? No, they're serious, and that's what they said.
Flyer, you know, and then they had a one-page article on it. And one of the comments in it was that we would hope to have this up and running.
Give us $40,000 and we can study, and then we oh my goodness. I don't know, we did that, and then I told my wife, she was out there, and she didn't want to go out.
I just, I think that's why they're done with us.
She decided that that's.
I think they got themselves in a
I think
box.
it. It looks good from the road.
Yeah.
See their new CEO is a former attorney. And so, and he's a reason to accept the charge.
Well, we got here, and we kind of locked in on the place.
I don't know.
John, did you want your fresh
And
coffee?
the other
Yes,
thing was
please.
that I think they thought,
Put a metal roof on it.
here's my guess. My guess is one way.
Do you want hazel or regular?
Regular, just top that.
Then they'll say, we should just be able to run around any place we want to, because union
It's on the south side of the
That's what I
road.
think is
I
happening.
mean,
I think they're just gonna say,
no basement,
until something
they
happens.
built in the.
And then they're gonna say,
The
well,
house
see,
is
it's your
all steel.
fault.
Basically, once you build it,
You wouldn't let us put our farm on where we wanted to,
She
and
laughs,
so
they
as
say
a
that,
result, you're having trouble.
that paint, I'm sure you get that stuff with a little bit thick, that they're supposed to last us.
yeah. That's my kind of house.
Spray foam, and then I got spray foam shoes, and spray foam, garage, and spray foam the
I
base.
have a feeling that you must have got at least a tentative agreement. Because they used to own the farm land across the
It's
road.
more expensive than that insulation, but if you do it yourself,
Anyway,
Like, what's a machine?
well,
then I think
mine
what
is not
happened
like
was,
a professional machine, so
they
it's slow.
noticed that there's been a walking
I think it was $8,000 I bought the
And
machine for.
then I think they told Jackman, oh, we're gonna have to put our power further into your property, so we told them before,
Plus
she
my
said,
garage,
that's all.
Right.
It's just an incredible case of.
I would take a little more coffee and one of those
That's why I was
cookies.
asking. I know a lot of the steel buildings, when you do these grants here, I mean, it's,
You know what they do? I'll tell you
it's
what
great,
they do.
it
They use
makes the
metal.
building extremely strong.
At least.
5 minutes, the 5 minutes is about up, can we?
Take our,
We're having a good conversation.
How about having it when we're done? Having
How
it,
you doing there, buddy?
good, good,
Me
yeah.
too.
You look a lot better than me.
Well, I just came, I had to bury my sister
Oh, I'm sorry.
last week. And, God bless her, she lived the most wonderful life. And, but we had to go into Chicago to do it, and I'm telling you.
Don't go to Chicago.
When we crossed the bridge from Illinois into Iowa and Dubuque, I felt like God's country. Leave me out.
Those are good, did you make?
No, Casey's.
I'd entertain a motion to come back into session.
I so move.
Have a motion, do I have a second?
I'll second.
Have a second? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Jeff,
Yes, sir.
you're on deck.
Mr. Chair, I just, before we leave the VSO one, I just wanted to go over quick, just so the public understands the reimbursement schedule for that. I'll just read the law quick. The codified law 33A 1-32 limits the county's reimbursements. So section 2, for a county of a population of 20,000 to 50,000, we're limited to $19,250 a year of reimbursement. But then it also says in 33A 1-32 that no county can be reimbursed in excess of 25% of that. So for 25% of $19,250 is $4,812.50. So for our budget line of $62,759, the state is going to reimburse us $4,812. So so we're paying the vast majority of what goes to the veterans in our county. So just make that clear. It's got to be 80-90% of the cost. So, and that's gone up. Last year it was $4,600, and it's actually gone up this year. So, thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Jeff, go ahead.
As always, I just try to do exactly what we were told to do as far as salaries and lighting, heating, cooling, that kind of thing. It's just we have to pay what we have to pay, unfortunately. We try to do what we can. We're looking at doing some upgrading as far as LED lighting in the building. That will obviously help us in the long run as far as labor costs and as far as energy efficiency. And that's something that if we can cut by 30%, you don't think about light bulbs, but there's a lot of light bulbs in these two buildings. And the jail, when we're in there constantly, with Preston, you go in there with a jailer to replace a bulb. And currently what we're doing is when I go in, I'm changing all the lights out to LEDs, removing the ballast so that we don't have to go potentially back in there for another 10 years.
What tab do you have him under, Patty?
That's it, it should be at the beginning. It's right under, state's attorney. At the beginning.
Yeah, Government Safety Center.
Under Government Center.
All right, thank you. Okay.
Got it.
So yeah, I guess if you have any questions, the big thing that I would like to have you put in your minds is, again, some of the larger expenditures that are gonna be coming up within the next 10 to possibly 15 years. Some of them are gonna be closer to probably 5 years. We need to update the elevator over at the safety center. The last estimate I got was around $140,000. We can't wait until it quits.
And Jeff, just so the rest of the commission knows, is that's the elevator that's all parts have been discontinued on.
Yes, yeah.
And we gotta give this guy credit. He's scoured the internet for scavenged parts, and we should have replaced that years ago.
Decades,
But thank
yeah.
you to him. He keeps that thing going safely, and you're a credit to Yankton County.
Well,
Really, you are.
we do the best we can with what we have. But like you said, some of those things we have to start putting away money for. The chillers, I've talked to our HVAC guys with Johnson Controls. The life expectancy on our chillers is 20 years. We're at or above that on all of them. So at some point, they're gonna start to fail. And can we get the parts? And is it gonna be August? And then we can't get it until next year? So it's just something I think we need to start putting away a fund so that we can say, okay, in 8 years, we have enough money, we can order a new chiller and do a new chiller. Or, and some of the air handlers over at the safety center are ancient. They're not efficient. We have old roll filters in there instead of pleated filters, which really don't do very well. They don't drain very well. Ventilation just, it isn't what it is, and that building, obviously, we all know has been changed over the years, so things don't work properly anymore like they should, because they were never designed to work with what's currently there.
So, does the county have a capital expenditure account to where, like
It's a
Jeff
county
says, you,
building fund that, is, we receive tax dollars for that.
but there's not a budgeted number that goes in there every year
Yes.
to build it? Okay,
This year I have 90,000 in there.
gotcha.
But then also you can, right now, we accumulate dollars for the emergency management and, can't think of right now, the ambulance. And you could do that with this. Accumulate, say, put aside 50,000 or 40,000 for 4 or 5 years, and then you'll
Yep.
have the money.
I think that's something that we actually need to do because, you know, with all our buildings and like our jail, when we had that water heater go out, the things it was in the jail, but it's more of in the safety center. When those things go out, it's not your average household one. It was what, was that like $12,000?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and it was hugely expensive, and if you're not budgeting for it, you're
Well,
gonna
and
get
we had 3 of them go out, one
Yeah.
right after the
Yep.
other, because
Yep.
again, they're all
Yep.
in line.
Yep.
They're all the same age, so they were within months of each
Yep.
other going out.
Yep.
Really quick question, the 40K estimate on an elevator, what year was that, or,
The 140,000,
yeah,
that was last year,
last year, okay.
yeah.
Jeff, under workman's comp, last year, the current budget is 2,000, and this year, I think it's 21,000.
It's comp.
It's
I
2,000.
think it's
2,000.
2,000,
There's
that's a comma.
in there.
Well, that's a comma?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I see
Okay.
what you're
I was
saying.
gonna say,
explains it.
Yeah.
yeah, no,
I'm relieved too, John. Don, so, yep.
I'm getting old, I
Hey,
can't see very
hey,
well.
That's a good question.
maybe my writing's not very good.
Maybe he was planning on fixing the elevator himself or
Yeah.
something. I don't know. We're prepared.
Any other questions of Jeff?
Now, Patty, how would we go about setting up like an accumulation fund for something like that?
Just like we do when we
Okay.
approve the, I can add it to
Okay.
the budget report.
And what do you feel would be a comfortable number for you for accumulation per year? You know, knowing that maybe some years you're gonna use it, maybe some years you're not. I'd rather have a slow and steady number in there than a whole bunch in there and then not using it to
Well, if-
20,000, is that enough?
If you look at the fact that the elevator needs to be done
Yeah.
sooner than later.
Yeah, but I would say something like the elevator is a big project that almost should be looked at separately because it's already here. So
Right.
I'd take the elevator out, but I'm talking about everything else. You're talking about heating and cooling systems and things like that.
25 or 30,000,
So
just kind of, like you said, to
20,
build.
maybe $20,000 a year, from here on out, and that would give you that fund to take care of those big
Yeah.
ticket, with the exception of the elevator, of
Right,
course.
yeah.
And if
Yeah,
it
to
gets
start
more
building
than, if it
for
gets
the
more
future,
than that,
yeah.
then, you know, because just like you said, that, this building is coming up on 20 years, the jail
Safety
is
center,
coming up
yeah.
on that, and, yeah, they're
Yeah.
gonna last forever, so. And I gotta give you and your team credit. The buildings always look great. You have pride in your job, and we can tell, no matter rain or shine, you guys are out there cleaning up the snow, and you do a great job, and I for
Well,
one
you know, and
appreciate it.
something that a lot of you commissioners don't know about is, you know, prior to my being hired here, we had years and years, we had flooding in the basement. And finally, we got that fixed. We had somebody come in, and they did what I wanted to have done. And nobody believed me, and we haven't had any water since. So that's, you know, that's huge, because we could have a lot of damage all the time downstairs.
A lot of sick people.
A lot, yes, yeah. And we've had, like I said, since then, knock on wood, we haven't had any issues for that. And because it's just a huge time hole and a huge safety issue. You know, and something, again, Dan, this week when we've had those rains and things like that, I come in and make sure that the drains are cleaned out on the roof. I came in and shut the sprinklers off here to save the county some money because it's raining. And while I was downstairs, the water heater wasn't working, so I fixed the water heater while I was here on a Sunday. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot to the buildings, and the jail is a huge portion of maintenance. There's always a plumbing issue or a floor issue or a lighting issue, or 2 o'clock in the morning you get a call saying the night light's strobing and the gentleman in the cell has epilepsy. You need to come down and change that bulb at 2 o'clock in the morning. So,
Any other questions?
We got the roof repair over there too.
Yep.
And, that was another issue where, Jeff and his wisdom saved the county,
it's
big
just
sum
more,
of money.
it's more maintenance things, you know, I mean, obviously, just, there's a lot.
And you do a great job.
Well,
with your team.
I
Thank you
try and
much.
my crew tries too, so,
Yep.
Thank you much.
thank you,
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
thank you.
Next item on the agenda, Mr. Weed.
Mr. Weed.
Mr. Weed? I don't know, that's,
I mean,
they-
when people walk in and see the sign that says weed supervisor, some of them start laughing. As far as my budget, the administrative part, we just did increases as prescribed with salaries and so forth. And everything else is exactly the same as last year.
It's surprising to me with the cost of chemicals that you can get it done for 20 grand.
It's all over the place. And all of our base chemical comes from China, so, I mean, everything does. So there's no telling. It's just in flux.
Are you able to keep up with all the rain?
It doesn't feel like it. This is the worst time of the year.
Yeah.
The stuff's starting to go to seed, people can see it, the phone's ringing off the hook,
Yep.
we're busy.
Any questions?
Nope.
No?
Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Keep this guy
job.
in line.
Thank you.
Best you
Appreciate you.
can. Keep him in line best you
Yeah, I appreciate,
I didn't see him there.
Yeah.
I appreciate
He's
your coordination.
Thank you.
Michael. You notice I said Michael instead of Mike, because it's serious today.
This is, just 2024 road plan map, 5-year plan.
You're gonna give Wanda one?
I guess, salary and wages, or salaries, wages, workman's comp, all that, healthcare and all that stuff. Current budget is 1.332, and going up to 1.4 on that. It's hard to calculate overtime like this year. It's the first time we've had overtime in a couple of years with snow. But have a little cushion there. Insurance, down in operating expenses, got that up a little bit. Professional services, that's up a little bit. That's engineering costs. I guess the main ones that are going to be increased would be the annual projects.
Why don't you just, for the public, tell them what projects you have in there, takes up that.
For the annual projects for next year?
Yeah.
Well, so that'll cover the annual projects and the asphalt mill and overlay.
Is this this one?
Yep, looking at the map there. As we all know, like last year was our first year of doing that microsurfacing. It's a new process. It turned out very well last year. We're doing it again this year. And then next year I have planned the 12 miles of the north-south Utica Road for microsurfacing. Deer Boulevard, Timberland Drive down by 52 there. Then also chip sealing, Oak Hills, English Heights, the small streets in Riverside Acres. And then our new asphalt that we did on Walshtown from 309 all the way to 291st Street. That's 18 miles of chip seal there. The 3 miles north of Irene, we overlaid that a few years back and chip seal that. And then also we had in the 5-year plan to do the 12 miles of 294
Mike,
to do a double chip.
I got a question on that, and I know that was in the 5-year plan, and, you know, that road, for those of you who don't know, at one point was a road that was ground up because it was no longer serviceable. I feel for the people out there, I really do, but I don't know if that road is a road that maybe necessarily needs to go back to a paved road.
I think that discussion needs to be had, but we need to put that on, we have to put that on one of the upcoming meetings
Okay.
agenda. That way then people could know about
Yeah.
it. And then also,
When are
that
you
way I
having
know
the-
my 5-year plan
Okay.
is due in October, and I need to have them meetings sooner than later.
Okay. Well, I think we need to probably do that because, just so we're up in there, because I think this was put on like 4 years ago and
Right.
hasn't been touched since, and a lot of things have changed. I believe the estimate was it 250,000 or something to do those 12 miles of road? There's no way, it's probably 4 times that now.
Well, overall, right now, I have
Yeah.
that,
What was the estimate for that? It was probably doable at that
do-
cost. It's no longer possible at that same, if it was the same price, I'd say go ahead, but it's not.
to do it right now, it would be right around that 930,000.
We can't do it. If we're gonna be replacing Stone Church Bridge, we can't do them both. Realistically, we're gonna have to choose.
And I think like Mike said, we need to
Yeah, yeah.
look that over and prepare, put a
Yeah.
plan together, how we're
Yeah.
gonna handle that.
Those are the tough choices we gotta make.
Yep.
So.
Then also, if you look at that on the map there, I had the 4 miles of Johnson Bridge Road for overlay for next year. Well, we changed our plan this year. So that's gonna be done this year, and I would like to move that asphalt for 24 up to 448. Possibly do 3 miles of it in 2024 and the other 3 in 25. But then
Are
if
you
we,
asking to do that today, or is it, what, are you just telling us your plan? or
that,
what?
that's my plan as of right
Okay.
now.
Okay. Well, that's not even on the 5-year plan, though, to do that.
Right, it will get put on the 5-year plan.
Okay, why that stretch right there, I guess?
It is pretty rough.
Okay.
Out of all of our roads in the county, I would say that's probably our roughest
That's a
stretch of
paved,
road
that's a
right now.
paved section right now?
Right.
Okay.
And we put a brand new bridge on it last year. Just trying to break it down,
Sure,
either do 3 and 3 or do all 6 or,
okay.
you know,
And you said
depending
you're-
on what we do with,
Okay,
that 12 miles of double chip. If we decide not to do that, maybe we can do all 6 miles of that overlay on 448 next year.
303, you said is getting moved up this year then? And we've already, and we did the annual inspections on that bridge already?
That's that'll be happening this summer.
Okay, yeah, the only reason I ask is that in the past, I know this is before my time and yours, they've paved that bridge and then did the inspection and then realized all the girts were cracked and then ground up and
Well, that
cut
was-
out all the paving that they just did and fixed them. And I'm saying if we can avoid that, cause that has a history of having problems, if, I would say inspect that bridge before you pave it. That's I guess.
Well, we're not touching the bridge.
Okay,
The
good.
the overlay
Okay.
would be on the road itself.
Okay, good.
And that deal there was,
Good, cause that was. a-
preservation grant that
Okay.
we had through the state.
Sure, okay. Cause that was, you remember what I was saying, cause they went and paved the whole thing and then.
You know, they
after
epoxy
that-
sealed it and,
After that, they inspected it and then they closed it down and it was
But it-
a lot of money that could have been spent better if the inspection would have been first. So,
at that time, that was every other year
Sure,
versus
sure,
now they
yeah.
get inspected every year.
Okay.
Any other questions?
At some point, we're gonna have to, I think, have the discussion about what to do with 434 and Kaiser Road. With the amount of traffic that is on those gravel roads, what is the future of those? They're probably the highest vehicle traffic number roads for gravel in the county. I don't have to tell you guys how often road graders are sent out there, and is it gonna be more cost-effective in the long run? The
I-
hard surface of those roads?
I was approached by a resident on that road and asked when we were gonna fix it. And I said, I told him, you might look at West 11th Street. There's a process that was put in
Yes,
place
exactly.
to do that. And his comment was 50% of the people would never pay a penny more for it, doing it. So I don't know
Yeah.
that they want it that bad.
Well, I think West 11th is, I can't believe how well that went together. And I think
Great.
that's an example of what we can accomplish when
Yeah.
we work together. And it
But
turned out to be.
they gotta
darn
realize
well.
that they,
Yeah,
one of the problems there is you got, I don't know, 15 or 20 houses within a couple hundred yards of the north-south road.
sure.
And those people, they don't wanna pay an extra 1,000 or 2,000 a year taxes, $700.
753 or something, I
Yeah.
think.
Well, I mean,
They've gotta decide, and I think we have an option out there that allows the people, if they wanna do that, they have an option to get together and resolve their problem.
yeah. Yeah, I said, maybe it's just time we have that discussion with them, and we have a really good template, I think, with West 11th on what success looks like, so.
Any other questions?
Well, one thing I wanted to add in there is machinery and equipment. I do have in there for an used but good broom, road broom, and then a new mower tractor, and then a new plow truck.
And that's one of the things in the strategic plan that I put together with Mike to put together a list of replacing equipment. upgrading the equipment and planning it out so that we get it structured correctly.
'Cause
You've got equipment out there that probably shouldn't be there anymore, and we could upgrade it, so.
honestly, we need to look at spending $400 to $600 or $400 to $600,000 a year on equipment. Because if we don't,
Right.
Patty?
we're just gonna have a hodgepodge there, but.
For the James River bridges, did we have that under the highway fund, or was that a separate account item?
That's under Mike's.
Under
Or-
Mike's? Or was that a
It's
separate?
it's separate.
Okay, yeah, that's what I
but
thought it was.
it's-
Is it still under yours, or is it hold it separate line? Because we were putting $250,000 a year?
Yes, and it's under it's just under bridges.
Okay.
'Cause then Mike
okay.
has a special one, and then there's bridges.
Okay, so is it under this one that's bridges, the
No,
201531?
it's not in here,
No.
it's accumulation.
Okay,
Or you've assigned those dollars.
okay,
It's not in here.
okay. And if we look from the 2020 highway budget to now, the 2020 highway budget was $4,661,555. We're at 7 million, or this proposed 7,293,250. You know, it's not quite, but almost doubled. You know, so.
Well, and last year's budget was 7.223, and
Yeah.
this year I'm proposing
But
7.
my only concern is that had ARPA dollars in it too, did it not? So, was it?
Not in his budget.
Not in his budget,
That's
okay.
what you assigned with
That's what we assigned, okay.
Yeah.
Well, okay. So, I mean, significant dollars, just for the public at home, I mean, significant dollars are being allocated to the highway department.
Increase from this year's budget to
Sure.
next year is only
Yeah,
approximately 70,000.
sure, but in 4 years, it is almost doubled. You know, from 2020 to 2021,
Right.
almost $1 million increase. And then from 2021 to 2022, over $1 million increase. And then from 2022, you know, to current budget, you know, then again, almost, so significant increases. So I just want the public to know where from 2020 to now, we've almost doubled the budget in the highway expenses.
Any other questions? Michael, thank your team.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks for coming
You
in
do a
on your
great
day off.
job, and thanks for your report.
Thank you. You guys have a good day.
Jenny?
Good morning.
Good morning.
So as far as our budget, I, did the increases for salaries. We're not looking at any large expenses for our office, so I didn't budget any extra.
Could you speak a little closer to the mic?
Sorry. So I did the salary increase, and we're not expecting any large expenses in the next year, so, for our office. So I didn't have any extra.
Any questions?
No, would you see any possibility for consolidation, or better working relationship with local counties, in your department? I guess, just so that the public understands, like, the nurse is a state employee, but then the secretary's the county employee.
County.
So, would you see any way that, like, the counties could work together, or do you feel that, like a county nurse, could that be like more regionalized with the state to better utilize tax dollars? I mean, would you see any way to do that?
Yeah, well, like currently, I know, like county clerical,
Sure.
if one works in another county, the counties, I think, work together to, for payment and things like that. The state, there are community health nurses. I cover, Union County,
Okay.
6 days a month, and they actually have their, like I do the state part of it, like the WIC program.
Okay.
They have their own county nurse, but that's one of the few
Okay.
that does, maybe
Okay.
one of the only ones.
Okay.
You know, but definitely there's a lot of, you know, cooperation with, I
Okay.
think, with counties, so.
Okay.
Any questions?
Is that it? We're
Had an easy one.
good.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, guys.
Thank you for what you do. Brian?
Thank you. Welcome, everybody. This is a pretty standard budget for me. I have an increase for step increases for 2 of my staff, and also anticipated cost of living adjustments. But other than that, I've tried to really hold the line on expenses. I actually trimmed my budget for equipment rentals, repairs, maintenance, utilities, supplies, and travel. The only areas we see an increase, of course, are the personnel services. So we do our best to hold the line. We don't pad our budget at all. If you look at our year-to-date through June 30th, you'll see that we're at 48% of our budget, and I expect by the end of the year we'll be at 98%, so everything's going along as anticipated so far. We have one employee, our part-time clerk, who doesn't really fit into the matrix. We don't have a position. We only have 2 people that are like her in the county, which is a part-time secretary, less than 20 hours a week. And she's currently receiving $18.53 an hour. I'm requesting a raise to $19.20 an hour for her. I think she's quite a bargain at that rate. I'd like to pay her $20 an hour, but I know not to get too greedy, so.
Yeah, the part-time employees are kind of a, yeah, they are kind of a bargain.
Yeah, they don't cost us any expenses or any holidays or anything like that, and they really do a lot. We get a lot of bang for our buck there, Dan.
And, you know, your department's pretty impressive because I think you've actually not only maintained, but actually have gone down. You used to have 3 full-time staff, and then your utilization of technology, and I think just leadership is, you know, now you have yourself and then 2 full-time staff and a part-time person. So, you know, why most really departments are expanding, you're, you know, not only holding the line, but reducing staff, which is, that's pretty unheard of these days and impressive, so.
I appreciate that. And to me, I get, with Diane, I get darn near the value of a full-time employee because she's so reliable. She never misses, she never takes a sick day or is never late, so she's so reliable, it's almost like having a 3rd full-time person. Thanks for pointing that out, though. It's been a while since we made that switch from that 3rd full-time to a person less than 20 hours a week, and it's worked out just fine.
I don't have any questions.
Explain to us what Hammond PR expense is.
This is a fund that's exclusive to the Register of Deeds office. It's something that we were able to get passed in the legislature, it must be 8-9 years ago now. And what it did, it allows us to accumulate funds for modernization and preservation expenses for our digital records and so forth, any technology really. And so we're allowed, every time we record a real estate document, we collect $30. This law that we were able to get passed allows us to take $5 out of every 30 that we, collect for a recording fee and put it aside in this M&P fund. And it's really been a good deal. Actually, it's accumulating faster than I can spend it, as you maybe can see. That fund is at over 100,000, and I don't have any plans really right now. I'm going to spend about 10,000 this year, and that's a big year. So we accumulate more than 10,000 a year. So good problem to have, I guess, if we ever do have some unanticipated need to replace all of our technology at once.
Thank you.
You bet.
Any questions? Thanks much.
Thanks
Thank
very
your
much.
team.
Appreciate it.
The next one is the ambulance.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Being a week and a half into the job, if permitted, I'm going to give my time to Troy Cowman. As he presented this budget before I hired on, we'll try to figure it out from there.
I couldn't talk him into it, so I'm doing it.
So we get to blame Troy, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
Our budget increase is just the 4.4%. It's going to be an additional $60,000 more than it was last year. Total budget will be 1.431 for 2024. Some of the changes that we're going to see is that we want to add on a couple of more full-time EMTs to get completely up to staff, and also added in a 20-an-hour-a-week part-time biller because we're bringing our billing back in-house again. And so Brenda is going to need some assistance with the billing. It's just too much for even one full-time person to do on their own. So we're going to get a part-time biller installed in there as well. The biggest increases were probably in our personnel budget, and that's just because one of the reasons was because we have switched from 6% on retirement to 8%. We've moved to Class B, public safety, so that is now 8% out of our payroll for retirement. And then with those additional employees, that just increased that a little bit. But some of the costs were able to come down in our operating expenses. You see in the professional services and fees that we dropped that. That's simply because that's where that's the line item that we were paying our current third-party billing company out of, and we're not going to have that expense next year, so that's going to really decrease that line item quite a bit. What questions do you guys have?
Do you have any, the numbers for the revenue that comes back from the billing for the ambulance? Do you have any of that available?
I just actually looked at it because that's going to be part of our second quarter report on Tuesday night.
Okay.
Over the last 3 months, for June anyway, they've deposited around $51,000 into our account. But the month before that, it was $81,000, and then the month before that is about $56,000. So it's still kind of that roller coaster right now as they're working on some of their collections. So essentially, we kind of expect that for 2023, and that we're going to be kind of on track with where we were last year. At this point, we're almost at $700,000 deposited for 2022. We should be pretty much on track with that, maybe even a little bit higher for 2023, because I think our call volume is going to be higher than it was. I think we're going to hit 2,300 calls for the first time this year, so should be higher. But bringing it back in-house is going to give us a little bit more control over that. Eric and I will be discussing some changes in the rates that we charge, and maybe adding some additional rates onto some types of calls that we respond to, so that should increase the revenue. So I think for 2024, we're probably going to see at least what we're doing this year, if not more.
Okay. It'd be, nice to see just the, what we bill, what we get back on a year by basis, because, what we bill in 2022 isn't necessarily what we get back in 2022, because it trickles back in, and then some payments we never get back.
Yep.
And then are we following through with that and putting liens out there on those? Are we doing the follow through on that?
QMC has a process where they send out notices after 30 days, again after 60 days, and then I believe after that, then the patient receives a letter from the state's attorney, and then that will end up going to collections after that.
Okay. Are you still having some issues with retention?
Not right now. We've actually been doing pretty good this year. We've hired, since January, I've hired 4 full-time EMTs, plus we brought on one of our part-time EMTs. We brought him on temporary full-time for a year, because he's in between schooling.
Okay.
And so we have been retaining all of them quite well, actually. The issue is still that we've had to replace paramedics with EMTs because there's just not paramedics available out there to take the jobs. And you know, we're competitive with wages, but we're not high enough that we're gonna pull somebody out of another job to have them come to Yankton unless we're really offering a lot more money, and it's just.
And yeah, that's something you and I have discussed. It's, you know, why is somebody gonna take one of these jobs when, you know, we're basically paying, what a stalker at Walmart makes, and for
Exactly.
the hours and for the horrible things that they have to do on a daily basis. It's not for everybody, and the burnout rate is pretty high in that job for what you guys have to do, and it's not for everybody. And to keep those people, the good people, you have to pay them appropriately, and that's probably something that needs to be discussed. Is I think the pay is probably a little on the low side for those people, and retention has been an issue, and I guess something needs to be changed. It's not a problem now, but it has been a problem numerous times, and it's gonna continue to be a problem. So.
Yeah, paramedics that we had move on, you know, from our roster last fall, did so for monetary reasons.
And we've been lucky getting a lot of mid-school people who to do it for that, but it's a short-term thing.
Yes.
That they move on from, but then that hurts you guys when they graduate, and then we don't have anybody for months and months, and
Right.
everybody else runs ragged, and we can't do that either, so.
Yeah, it would be nice to have that available to be able to offer them a better salary, and I think we would have better retention if we were able to do that.
So comments that I hear is that we, you know, pay them less than a Walmart, same as Dan said. What kind of impact on the budget would there be to get that pay?
You would probably have to move up our starting salary. You'd probably have to move it up at least $2 to $3 an hour from where it's currently at right now. You know, and so take that times each employee. I mean, you're looking at an impact of probably $50,000 to $100,000 a year, depending on what wages that we're at that point, to increase the budget by that much in order to get those wages up. Because not only does the salary itself increase, but then you've got to pay more for the 8% of the retirement. It just adds more to the benefits as well. So it adds up pretty quick, but that's kind of where we're at right now. We're about $2 to $3 an hour, probably too low from where we should be.
You know, I think we're gonna have to have the conversation at some point on, you know, what we wanna do, you know, with the ambulance, and I think you guys got a great team, and it's a great service, and how do we keep it competitive? And I think everybody knows my thoughts on going to ambulance district is probably the best case for everybody. If you want a good ambulance service that shows up when you call 911, you have to be willing to pay, and that's through taxes. It's a reality. So,
Right.
And
in addition to that 4.4%, the other thing that we always do every year is the accumulating funds. We ask for funds to be put in there. Last year, you guys put 40,000 in it. I'm asking for 50,000 this year. Those accumulating funds are used as they accumulate over the years to replace the ambulances as we need, and then next year we're going to have to replace one of the quick response vehicles. So that's probably going to cost, I would guess, around $40,000 to replace that. But
is that one of the pickup trucks?
one of the pickup trucks, yeah. So that's going to need to be replaced next year. We do have some money in there still right now, but not enough to replace that pickup. I believe there's about 27,000 in there right now. So replacing an ambulance is something that we should do at a maximum of every 4 years. With 4 ambulances, that means that the oldest one will be 16 years old by the time it gets replaced, and it's probably going to have around 200,000 miles on it by then. So that's every 3 to 4 years we should be replacing an ambulance.
Troy, I know you're gonna give your report on Tuesday. You said you're on target to hit, was it 25, or what was the number of calls this year that you thought you were gonna?
Last year we did 2,258, I believe is what our number was. Right now, with where we're at for the first 6 months of the year, if you double that, we're gonna pass 2,300, And I wouldn't be surprised if we hit 2,400 this year.
And how long do you think you're gonna be able to run just 2 primary crews with a third crew that calls in? I mean, at some point, we're probably gonna have to go to 3 full-time crew. I mean, what is that number? Do you know? Have you thought about that for planning purposes?
We're averaging a second ambulance call. We're averaging one second crew ambulance call every day, every single day on average. The second crew is going out, and so as we see that start to increase, then as the first crew gets busy on calls and on transfers, and the second crew is out, we're relying on people just to respond to an as-needed page for third out calls. We don't have a high volume of third out calls right now. Probably once a month or so we request a third out crew. You're going to see on our report that we do have third out calls on there for the last 3 months, but that's simply because in some cases we're calling somebody in extra to be a third crew to go do an airplane transport from the airport to the hospital. As far as 911 emergent third out calls, it does happen, probably about once a month or so, but we're going to see that increase as the call volume increases.
And so everybody's aware the third out call is where you call in the third crew, and that's where people are leaving work or leaving home and throwing on their gear and getting in the ambulance and going, and, people only can leave work so many times a month before the boss gets upset or so we got to be careful about stressing that third crew too much to the point where they say, I don't want to do it anymore. So I guess to the commission and everybody, we're nearing the point where we might have to have a full third-time crew. And I'm not saying it's today, but it's coming.
Yeah, it is.
If the calls keep coming like they're coming, they're not gonna go down.
No, they're going up.
They're ever, and it's gonna be sooner than any of us realize. Probably in the next, I'd say maybe 5 years, maybe sooner.
I agree with that.
And
the thing that's kind of been our saving grace right now for the third out calls is the fact that we have a full set of full-time crew, and so it's their day off, and a lot of those full-time EMTs that we've hired have moved to town. They live in the city limits, so even though it's their day off, they're able to respond to those third out calls. But
you can only do that on your day off so many times.
Exactly.
And
Exactly.
we gotta be careful where we don't
that
take
leads to
advantage of that, because then you lose people too.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
Well, it's a pretty complex issue, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you very much, and thank your team.
Thank you, guys.
Yes, you're welcome.
How
Thank
do
you.
you like it so far? You learning a lot, Eric?
Troy's been a very good host so far, jumping on both feet. When you start talking about the budget and bringing full-time staff on, with us bringing, in the process of changing over and bringing our billing in-house, it's hopefully gonna help our budget, which in turn is going to allow us to look to hire more full-time staff. And Troy and I have had some conversation about how we can expand some of those roles to maybe foresee bringing on full-time staff, by also offsetting some of their costs, but we can have a conversation later on that.
Yep, sounds great.
It's going well, and I'm enjoying it very much.
Good.
Welcome. Yep.
Welcome to the community.
Thank you.
State's attorney. An easy one.
Thanks.
Thank you.
So obviously, I'm not Rob. We're doing kind of double duty here, so he is still obviously with another commitment that our office had today. As far as the budget itself goes, we basically just did the normal increases as far as cost of living and all of that. Our office has changed a little bit as far as utilizing, we're still utilizing John Billings on a contract basis to be the prosecutor for drug and DUI court. We're required by the state if you have that program to obviously have a prosecutor. And we do that for both Yankton and Clay County. We also discovered this spring after Mary left our office that the poor relief aspect and requirement was more than what we could fulfill with our 3 support staff. So we found a contract person right now, so they're just getting an hourly rate, coming in and trying to keep us caught up with those poor relief requests, burial requests. As Sheriff Chrissy talked about, you know, all of those medical bills that inmates incur, those have to go through that coordinator to get paid. So right now we're lucky we've got somebody that is willing to just get paid an hourly rate, no benefits, no guaranteed 20 hours a week, just the hours that she puts in. So the only request, and it's not in the budget because obviously you haven't approved it, is we are asking for a full-time diversion coordinator to be in our office. This is in addition to the juvenile coordinator at the Boys and Girls Club. That program is running very well. They have applied and have gotten that 3rd-year grant, which takes that position to July of next year. But the state is now looking at other programs besides juveniles. You see Jean is here. I did attach the House bill, which talks about how they want counties to address what they call the emerging adult section of our community. So what I handed to you was our numbers. We've implemented those diversion programs already. I based them off of what Pennington County's been doing for years. So we're talking about young adults who are 18 to 25, typically first-time offenders, minor offenses, but we are also doing felony diversion for a couple of drug offenses. What that allows is for us, once the diversion program is done, is to expunge that from their record. And for a young individual who has a felony drug charge, it has long-lasting repercussions. They're not going to be able to get student loans to go to college. They're probably not going to be able to rent an apartment. There are any number of things that those types of even just charges, not necessarily convictions, are going to show up when someone does a background check. So we took what Pennington County's done, and as you can see on those numbers, they're pretty, the felonies, right now we've done 5, but 5 in a year is quite a bit. The emerging adults, I've done plenty. We also added simple assault diversions because what tends to happen is we work with River City Domestic pretty closely. They have people that come in and they don't want charges. They are not comfortable. The police have arrested someone and they want the charges dropped. Our office isn't comfortable doing that. So we've devised a program to work with that defendant and victim to hopefully change some behaviors that probably caused that to happen. And then the other one that's very time consuming is in conjunction with the school district, we're doing a truancy diversion. And that's for an entire family. And that's for an entire school year. These families might have 4 kids, 2 in elementary school, a middle schooler, a high schooler. So Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health Systems of Care has been a huge help with that component of it. But our request is we need someone in our office to oversee all of those programs. Right now, the JDA coordinator at the Boys and Girls Club can only help us with the juveniles. And even that is limited. So as Preston talked about, the sheriff's office babysat a juvenile. I mean, you were pulling a deputy off of patrol to sit with a juvenile. Our office babysat a juvenile that same week for 2 days. The juvenile was not allowed to go to the Boys and Girls Club. He had been previously expelled from there, so to speak. And so our office supervised. Luckily, we have an intern from USD and he's getting credit from the law school and we're not paying him. So he did some bonding with this young individual. But because it's located at the Boys and Girls Club, there's limitations. Lewis and Clark Behavioral Health is opening up their facility for us. So the coordinator is going to be able to utilize their facility if the juvenile is not allowed at the club or during the school year on school property. So we need a new position. Across the state, there's only 2 other counties that utilize the Boys and Girls Club for their JDAI program. One is Watertown, Cottington County, and the other is Brookings. Brookings just added what they're calling a human services person at the county in the state's attorney's office. Plus, they still are going to have the juvenile coordinator at the Boys and Girls Club. So we're basically down to Watertown, Cottington, and if you talk to them, their Boys and Girls Club is run differently. They have social workers, it's unbelievable what kind of services they have there. So really, there isn't going to be a county that doesn't have a diversion coordinator at the state's attorney's office, because Brookings and our county are pretty much it. So that's the big expense we want to add to our budget.
And that's in the salary figures.
No, it's not yet. None of this is in there because until you approve it, we didn't even, I know Gary and I've kind of talked about what some of the other diversion coordinators that are county employees, what their salaries are. I think the range was like 45 to 50, something like that.
More like 45 to 55, yeah.
So, but that is not included. Right now, our budget is just currently the 6 of us in the office, 3 attorneys and 3 support staff. We did not fill that 4th attorney position that got approved during COVID. We had filled it and then she left to go to Brown County and then we didn't replace her. So we're back to just 2 full-time and then Rob is 80%.
Is there a plan to fill that 4th attorney spot or?
Not at this time.
Okay.
I think the coordinator would be a better use of funds and obviously would be less expensive.
Okay.
Because the salary that you would be paying for that would be less than what you would be paying for another attorney.
So I trying to think in my head, you got, I know the 3 attorneys that you have, and then you got, who are the other people? You have the welfare person, have you rehired somebody in that position yet?
Yes,
Or- okay.
just
Can you
a
go through the staff? 'Cause
Sure.
It's been a while since I've been over there.
So there's 2 full-time and then Rob is 80%. We have 3 full-time support staff. So that's Tara, Holly, and Cassie. And Holly and Cassie came on in March. They replaced Laura and Mary. And then we added, Sue Adam is doing our poor relief on a contract basis. So.
Is she a contract employee then? Or?
Yes, so
Okay.
she just hourly rate, just like John Billings.
Okay. Would there be any interest in contracting with maybe another county for poor relief? I know like Minnehaha and Lincoln have worked together for poor relief, and they seem like they do a ton of cases. Would that be something that would maybe help alleviate that off of your guys' plate, or?
Well, we only took it on our plate when Jennifer retired.
Yeah.
So that was part of the contact center.
Yeah. Well, and the reason I say that is because with Medicare expansion, I mean, that's maybe gonna be something that is a big deal now, but I think moving forward, it should be less and less, right?
I doubt it. Most of what we get are claims that we process for the jail.
Okay.
Their burial requests, those are all local. Yeah, I mean, Medicare's not gonna change those requests. So,
But the indigent care ones, is that?
from what I see of those, I would say most of them are the mental health for their admissions and their physicals at Avera, and then their admissions either out to HSC or Avera Behavioral Health. Those aren't gonna change. Medicare expansion isn't gonna change any of that. That's all regulated by statute. We don't,
Okay.
again, the state says we have to pay X amount for those admissions, so that's what we do. But all of those have to be processed by somebody, and so it's kind of nice because the jail can just send over a jailer with like a bill for an inmate, and we can get that processed. They like to have those processed pretty quickly, so. I don't know that sharing would work, Dan.
Any other questions?
Okay, and I think Boys and Girls Club was supposed to get on the agenda
They are next meeting.
Tuesday to talk about their part of the whole plan, so.
Thank you, Deb. Director of Equalization, Michelle.
Hello.
How are you?
Hi.
So, ours is pretty simple, I believe. Just did the basic for salaries, what was expected and anticipated, and asked for us for personnel services, for expenses. They all remained the same as the current budget. I did do a 3% increase in repairs and maintenance, simply just because of the cost of everything going up. That's where our vehicle repairs are at, IT, all of our vendor services, program services are out of there. I think, Patty, did you get this to them?
Yes.
Yeah, so you guys have seen it all, know what's coming out of each line item.
Where, I didn't.
I just gave it to you guys this morning.
Oh,
It's here someplace.
thank you for printing that instead of writing it. I appreciate that.
I noticed that was an issue last year, and
that
I,
is
yep, that
great.
makes a difference, doesn't it?
does.
The one thing I was, after hindsight looking at it, postage went up, fuel going up, that comes out of our supplies, but with, I feel with the overall budget, I think it'll be fine. Year-to-date spending, we are at 36% as of halfway through the year. So, of course, we're down staff currently, and we'll be even more down. We have somebody leaving recently, will be leaving. So, we're hiring.
Any questions?
Now, Michelle, at the state level, you're getting a lot of pressure on consolidation for counties and all that. Is there anything like a department like yours can do? And I don't know nearly as much as you do, but from what I understand, with 66 counties, there's many, many different types of software. Isn't there something like 14 to 16 different softwares that counties use?
Well,
Is that
depending
correct?
on different avenues, so
Yeah,
you'll
yeah,
have
for-
your CAMA software, what
Yeah.
values your property, and then you have your administration software, which multiple departments use that, which is our Encode, so that's,
Okay.
you know, different. As of right now, for costing, the state has, statute allows two different costing manuals approved, Vanguard and Marshall and Swift, and it's a county preference as to
Okay.
which one you want to use.
And then, so we have 66 counties and they kind of do their own thing, and then the state, and they have numerous different systems, and then there's a state system that they've built where all the counties, am I saying this right?
Yes, you're getting it,
So
so.
there's 66 counties that use many, many different systems trying to talk to one state system, and from what we're being told, it's very problematic. Is that
Well,
accurate
from,
to say?
I would say a year ago, from
Yeah.
what we were talking about at district
Yeah, yes,
meeting,
yes.
the state implemented that axiomatic
Mm-hmm.
programming for encode the different vendors' administrative programs to talk the same way. So the state reports are they all look like this, whether they have 20 different vendors, which I want to say for administration, we have, there was less than 10 different ones, and a couple
Sure,
counties have made their own as
Yeah,
well.
like Sioux Falls.
Yep,
the
and
big
Pennington
counties
have
just
their
make
own.
their own
Yep,
'cause they got-
but most of them are on, there's about 4 other ones that are primary. There's one other county that is the only one in the state that has something else. But the state has implemented this axiomatic, which is our state reporting program, and the vendors and the different department heads have been working with, between the state axiomatic programming and our vendors, working with how the reports, this line item is pulling from this area and it needs to go in this box. And working with them as to making sure that we're reporting the numbers in the correct spots.
Yeah.
And that's vendor
Yeah.
and state controlled more so. I would say us as department heads, we have just more of the headache talking
Yeah.
between the two.
Exactly, and I guess somewhere, this is at the state level. If the state's gonna create a system, it would be nice if they would create it, instead of us buying a system, maybe they create a system for the county to use, and then it could talk back and forth, instead of creating a system that has to interact with, the 14 to 16 ones that the county uses, and imagine this, it doesn't work very well. And so that's kind of where we're talking about.
Yeah,
The
but-
state could have
Yeah,
some
but
working together.
the problem there is that
Yeah.
the state has its vendors, they have to go through contracts, and it has to be bidded out, and all those other
Yeah.
things, and you have to have things all open, and that's how you end up in these situations. And
And-
then
But-
state's providing a spec, and.
And for
yeah,
our,
you
for our
just have to-
case today on budget,
Yeah,
we aren't gonna resolve this.
Yeah.
No, I realize that, but this is the discussion happening at the state, is the state has the system where all of this gets reported and funneled to, okay? And it has to have a system anyway. It's like the treasurer's office for, look at that. If they're building a system, why not build it for us to use for our purposes, and then the information flows, instead of having 14 to 6, all 66 counties, you run wild and do whatever, and then we'll create a system that all of that goes
But this
through,
is
and
the same
imagine
system,
that
it's the
it
same
doesn't work
system
well.
as like in.
Okay,
traffic
guys.
control, so we can go down this rabbit hole a long
Gene's heard
ways,
the
but-
message.
Yeah.
Let's move on.
So,
Any other questions? Hearing none, thank you much, thank you for
one more
doing all
question.
you've done in the
Would
last
it-
year.
Would it work to have, like, say, a regionalized equalization area that, instead of at a county level, maybe you cover multiple counties? I can't imagine a property that's assessed in Yankton, farmland, for example, assessed in Yankton County is assessed much differently in Clay County. Now, sure, that levies and things like that might be different, but would that be a possibility for?
So
a
for the
department
example,
like that?
using farmland.
Sure.
Farm is on productivity.
Yeah.
The numbers come from SDSU, state, we're really told what to do with it. Where they go, we don't have much say in that.
Sure,
For
sure.
residential property, I think we were talking about that, 3 years ago or something, merging with other counties.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
And I just don't foresee I didn't grasp how it's gonna physically work.
Mm-hmm.
You would have to definitely have somebody in the middle, but you would spend more windshield time. You'd be wasting more time just getting to properties and working with other people's schedules. So if we're here in Yankton and we need to go to Springfield, well, let's spend a day in Springfield, then you have food and mileage and, all that entailed on it. So I don't count it out that it might be in the future. I don't necessarily think near future. But then again, the other side of that is no different with the different systems. We have different tax bases and different costs. And we have, speaking of different systems, we have a CAMA system called ProVal. Other counties, they have Marshall and Swift Book, where they are going through line item by line items, adding fixtures, adding ceramic tile floor, versus ours is in a can system and we use it's way more efficient than flipping through a book and estimating, well, okay, there's a percentage because this isn't the way this one is, and it's more equitable, which is what we're about.
Okay.
So.
Any other questions?
I don't have any.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks,
Thank
Michelle.
you for everything you do. Gary?
So like a number of departments, our costs are pretty set, so basically I just added to the salary and insurance as stated, and you know, we have costs like playing District 3, that's 28,710 out of our professional services budget, but basically our costs are pretty much the same each year, so that's all that changed in our budget. About the only thing that varies is publishing, because every year's different on how many ordinance changes and things we may try and do, so.
Online permitting software is still going
Yeah,
well?
it's working well. We always have some little quirky things that have to be worked on periodically, but overall, I think it's worked out well for everybody. A lot of people like the fact that they don't have to stop into the office to do a permit, so I think people appreciate that.
We have some plans to update some things in the ordinance. You've kind of figured that extra work in. I guess
Yes.
that's all what you do anyway.
Yeah, and those are the things, like I said, that varies every year, but we usually end up doing at least a couple ordinance changes, and then we're always looking at this next year we'll be looking at changing the floodplain again too, because we'll be adopting that map probably in the next year or so, and so there's always things that pop up that we want to tweak or need to tweak.
Any other questions of Gary?
Not at this time.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much. Sarah? Good morning.
All right, so for our budget at this time, we've used less than 35% of our 2023 budget. And some contributions that Yankton County Conservation District has made in the county over the last year. We work often with FSA and NRCS to help producers complete conservation requirements for their contracts. This year in particular, we provided over 8,000 trees for hand planting and machine plantings that were completed by us. And cost share is available to those people who pre-ordered and for anyone who had a tree planting completed by us. And we completed 7 tree plantings, and one had over 1,800 trees and shrubs. A lot of them are varieties that are great for wildlife and natural to the area. Also this year, in previous years, we have presented to middle schoolers for Arbor Day, but there was some scheduling conflicts, so we weren't able to do that, but did offer free trees or a South Dakota conservation bag to any student who came with their guardian to pick up trees. And I believe there was like 20 to 30 kids at least that took that up and were really excited about having a tree of their own to plant. Most kids chose the tree over the bag, so that was kind of encouraging.
That's good, the right choice.
Yeah. Currently this year, we also have a small grass drill available for rent. And then we have actually contracted with the local business this year for our larger grass drillings, because there has been some issues trying to get a permanent person to do those, as the previous person retired. And then there is also a change that is going to be happening this year that's not reflected directly in the budget,
But at our monthly board meeting yesterday, I informed the board and our liaison, John, about my plans to step back from this position at the end of the year, as my husband and I are expecting a child. So I want to focus on that. So there will be a transition period in there where I will still be available, but there will need to be adjustments for who's being hired and how long I'm still employed to complete training for that person.
Congratulations to you.
Thank you. Any questions?
You'll be missed.
So we'll discuss Tuesday night about putting a job application out for Sarah's replacement and decide what we need to do for training that person, so.
No other questions? Thank you, Sarah. Appreciate it. Extension service.
Well, as you guys can see, my budget really didn't change. The only thing that changed in it would have been salaries for our increase. That's pretty much it. I think I did increase insurance just a little bit because we were pretty close to maxed out last year. But it's less than 1% increase this year.
Is this the budget for just extension and 4-H too?
Yep, yeah, extension and 4-H, they're both combined together there, yep.
How has it gone? How has it been going since Ms. Hollenbeck left us, I guess?
No different than it was before. Lauren was a great asset for us, but she just helped us with what we already had going on. And then she was more of our liaison, so Katie's had to pick up that part. So she's had to learn some of the stuff that the state requires us to do, whereas then Lauren did that before. So Katie's been doing a good job picking all that up, and
Yeah, I appreciate you guys doing that. I still think that was a pretty raw deal the state did to us, and they've done that to several other counties as well, and it's unfortunate, so.
yeah, they're trying to get their people were getting stressed out to the point they're wanting to quit because they're in too many counties, which I can understand that. I do 1 county and I would not want to do 3. So I can kind of get it, but yeah, they could have came about it in a better way, yes.
Jean, did you hear about that with the state 4-H? Okay.
Yes, I did.
I don't
Any
think
other
there's
questions?
much going on in the state that Gene doesn't know about.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Hearing none. Thank you very much. Appreciate.
County fair is coming up.
Yep.
When?
It is always the first weekend in August. So we start on Friday. It's Friday and Saturday. Like, we also start on Thursday, but Thursday's not a public day. That's when we check in all our projects, all our animals. Katie and I run around like chickens with our head cut off that day. So Friday is all of our animal shows, and then Saturday it's more of our fun day. So, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, we're at the point on our agenda where we're ready for a lunch break.
Do you guys want to go ahead and do mine?
Sure.
Cause our lunch break is at 12, unless you wanna go early, but as long as we have a little bit.
That would be fine.
And mine hasn't increased all, I just went by for salaries, is the CPI is 3.0, and then the county's growth was 1.4, so I increased the salary by 4.4. And, my deputy Karen will be retiring at the end of the year, so I will be hiring, a person in, I'll start in August since Karen can be around, to teach them the payroll aspect of it. And, the only thing I increased was, the refresh, and that was 5,000. Then I also have the election budget, and that increased because of our elections next year.
Pretty straightforward.
Does it, is that considering the use of machines?
Yeah.
And if we didn't use machines, is there any kind of estimate what that might be?
No.
But many, many times more than that.
Yes.
There's a really good podcast from yesterday's county funding study about the auditors from around the state talking about all the requirements that auditors have to have. Is you have to find people first off that aren't overly political and that you think are gonna make a good fit, and they can't, they can't be on the ballot, they can't be related to anybody on the ballot, and they have to be of the correct political party, they can't be independents, and I'm, Patty, you jump in anytime, there's so many rules that you have to put on them, and then once they start at 7 o'clock, and voting ends at 7 o'clock, and then I believe, Patty, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't leave after that, if you're counting, and so I don't know what the average age is, but it's older than I am, and I don't know how long they would be there counting, so.
You can have a new set of group
Yeah.
to come in, and but you have to
Yeah,
swear them in and.
Yeah.
And
so it's a lot to ask, I guess, so.
it'd be a lot of work,
Mhm.
and they're gonna be tired, and
Yeah,
everybody makes mistakes.
sure.
And I've never had any problem with our counting machine.
Well, I believe one of the printouts that we had from one of those locations that was suggesting that it needed to be changed, all of the examples they used were from Georgia and South Carolina. So, anyway, hearing, do I have a motion to,
I guess we could do our commission one too, couldn't we? Or do we wanna do that later? If we're ahead of schedule. You run such a good meeting, Don, that,
And I just put the 4.4 in there for your salaries. I mean, you guys have to decide if you want to give yourself a raise anyway.
the only thing I was, would maybe like to have is some more travel. I did get appointed to the NACO Military and Veteran Service Committee, and I'd like to go to a NACO conference at some point, because they keep asking me to go to one, and I know John has maybe shown some interest. When you go to those national conferences, you learn so much, you learn about all these federal programs that you would never realize unless you attend some of those. If we realized a federal bridge project or road project, it could pay for itself 100 times over, and we always say how important education is. I think those conferences are good, and we don't go to those every year, but I think every once in a while they're probably worth going to.
what would you suggest being added?
I don't know. Gary, what, you went to one, did you not, or have you been to one before?
I've been to numerous ones in the past, and you're probably talking 2,000 per person for everything.
I don't know,
for
add maybe,
airflight, hotel.
I think it's invaluable, to go. I think it'd be something that,
I agree.
we should have it as an option, and if the commissioner chooses to go, let them if they don't want to go, so maybe, we add 2,000 for each person or something, and if they go, it's in the budget, if we use it, great, if not, it goes back to the general. And, but I mean, I know, like Ryan, they have whole sessions on, IT and AI, you might learn a lot, you could come back with all kinds of good info, and it could, other where there's thousands of counties, and sometimes we're sitting here trying to think of systems that'll
Reinvent the
work,
wheel.
and it's already been solved somewhere else, and
Did you wanna increase your travel then?
I would like to, personally. I'd like to,
I think like Dan says, I think it'd be beneficial for us to pick and choose who wants to go, when and where. Like I think next year the conference is in Dallas, wasn't that what he said? Which would be an easy drive to go down there, so you know.
yeah, and if we use it, great, if we don't, but like I said, you go to one class and you get one federal $50, $80, $100,000 grant. We just made, you know, we helped out the county significantly, so I guess I'd like that added, to travel to do some of those conferences.
How much do you want in there?
I'd say
2,000
10,000
a person, 10,000.
10,000 for total at 2,000 per commissioner.
There's already 10,000 in there.
Okay. Well, then maybe add just five for that, 5 more then,
5 more?
yeah. Well, that, does the stuff we have now covers this like state conventions and stuff?
Yeah, pretty
Okay.
much, you know.
What, and,
But you guys, you know, might have
Do-
meetings or something during the,
Well,
this is just
just-
an estimate anyway.
maybe, what did we, well, we used half of it, yeah, maybe add another 10, I guess, and then if we
20.
don't use it,
Yeah.
then it goes back to the general fund anyway. I guess I want, you know, the option of people to educate themselves. Education is always important, in my
Well,
opinion.
That would be where 8 county meetings come out
Yeah,
of too. We should be attending
I'm not.
as many of those as we can.
Yeah, and the state, conventions, and then I believe,
District 3,
yeah, the District 3 ones, and then I believe they're gonna have the, Western Region Conference in Rapid City. I wanna say one of these times coming up is supposed to be you know, another good one to go to, so.
good.
Right.
Okay. I'd entertain a motion to go into lunch break.
So moved.
I have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second, discussion. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed the same, motion carries. We are adjourned until 12:30. Let's say 12:20.
Do you wanna leave this on, or do you wanna stop it and start over for the last piece?
Start and start over.
Okay.
Please.
12:20, you said?
Shit. I lost my great shoe. These are crap.
Oh, bummer.
They don't. Do we have lunch here? Do we have lunch here?
Do you want something?
I,
I gotta run home quick anyway.
where are you guys gonna go?